My drag was screaming. The rod bent so hard I thought it was going to snap, and the only thing between me and the biggest catch of my life was a yellow ball of paste that cost 11 cents. Let me back up. Private lake outside Cookeville, Tennessee. Scorching November afternoon. 4 hours. $800 of gear between 4 guys. 0 fish. Not a bump, not a nibble. Dead rods. Then, a 71-year-old local named Old Ben walked up. No tackle bag, just an apron, a plastic tub, and a grin. He shaped a ball of yellow paste, dropped it in the water, and said, "Count to 30, then cast." 15 seconds after my bait hit that dissolving cloud, my drag went off like a fire alarm. 3 hours later, we had over 50 pounds of fish from a lake that gave us nothing all day. I asked him what it was. He called it the barn pantry mix. Then he said something I'll never forget. We never needed a store. That sentence sent me down a rabbit hole, and what I found is going to change how you fish, permanently. Welcome to Forbidden Lures. I'm your host. We uncover the secrets, the bans, and the raw science of angling that the billion-dollar fishing industry hopes you never figure out. Subscribe now because today we're exposing a method so effective it's been banned from competitive fishing. And the third ingredient is the one nobody sees coming. Let's get into it.
1. The secret ingredients, hiding in plain sight. If I told you that a mixture you can buy at any grocery store for under $2 catches fish faster and more consistently than a $30 custom lure, what would that say about the entire fishing industry? Think about that for a second. Billions of dollars in synthetic attractants, designer plastics, chemical scent formulas, and a 71-year-old man from Tennessee outfished all of it with 3 things from his kitchen. Here are the ingredients. Ready? Number 1, fine yellow cornmeal, the same stuff your grandmother makes cornbread with. A bag costs about $2. Number 2, pure honey. Not the fancy organic stuff, just regular honey from the grocery store, a few dollars. And number 3, this is the one that changes everything. Ground cinnamon, $1.50. That's it. 3 ingredients. Total cost for an entire afternoon of fishing, less than $2. Meanwhile, the guy in the bass boat next to you just spent $40 on a single swim bait. Now I know exactly what's happening in your head right now. Your guard is up. You're thinking, come on, man, there has to be more to it. But there isn't. And here's the thing, that skepticism you're feeling, that is precisely what the modern fishing industry is counting on. They need you to believe that catching fish is complicated. They need you to believe you need their proprietary formulas, their laboratory-tested scent oils, their nanoparticle coatings. Because the moment you realize that cornmeal, honey, and cinnamon outperform all of it, they lose you as a customer. And by the way, this is completely legal bait in most states. Under Tennessee law, for example, bait is legally defined as any prepared substance designed to attract fish by taste or odor. That directly includes everyday items like corn, bread, and paste products. This mix is as natural and legal as it gets. But as you'll see later in this video, where you use it and how you use it, that's where it gets controversial. So you've got the ingredients, but knowing what's in it doesn't explain why it works so devastatingly well. And the science behind this? That's where it gets truly insane. 2. The hardcore science. Why fish literally cannot resist on forbidden lures. We don't just want to know that something works. We need to know why. And when I dug into the research on these 3 ingredients, I realized Old Ben wasn't just following some folk recipe. He was, without knowing it, exploiting one of the most powerful biological mechanisms in nature.
Let's start with a basic fact most anglers forget. Fish see terribly. Their vision is blurry, limited, and next to useless in murky water. But their sense of smell? It's one of the most extraordinary tracking systems on the planet. A fish's olfactory system can detect chemical compounds at concentrations so low they would be invisible to any piece of lab equipment you or I could afford. This is how they find food, avoid predators, and navigate entire river systems. And this paste hijacks that system completely. When you drop this ball into the water, three things happen in sequence. Think of it as a three-stage biological alarm that goes off in every fish within range. Stage 1. The cornmeal. Because it's a fine powder, and this is critical, it must be fine, it doesn't dissolve instantly. Instead, it creates a suspended cloud. Thousands of microscopic particles hanging in the water column, slowly sinking, slowly drifting with the current. And every single one of those particles is carrying the scent of what comes next. Stage 2. The honey. Honey is incredibly dense in fructose and glucose. To you, that's sweetness. To a fish, that is an unmistakable chemical signal that says, high-calorie food source nearby. But here's what makes honey special. Its complex aromatic profile doesn't just flash and disappear like most attractants. It lingers, it spreads, it recruits fish from a distance that would shock you. But the absolute game changer, the reason this paste goes from pretty good to borderline unfair, is ingredient number 3, cinnamon. To you, cinnamon is a holiday baking spice, something you sprinkle on French toast. But to a fish, its active compound, cinnamaldehyde, is a metabolic trigger. And I need you to understand what that means. Imagine you haven't eaten in 18 hours. You're starving. And suddenly, someone opens the door to a bakery and the smell of fresh bread hits you. Your mouth waters. Your stomach growls. Your brain didn't make a decision. Your body just reacted. That is exactly what cinnamaldehyde does to fish. Scientific trials on common carp showed that a diet containing just 1.5% cinnamon powder significantly increased their weight gain and daily growth rate. In catfish, cinnamaldehyde actually triggers genes responsible for fat metabolism and rapidly drops blood glucose levels. In plain English, when a fish smells cinnamon in the water, its brain tells its body, digestive food is here, you are hungry, eat now. It doesn't think, it doesn't hesitate. It pre-programs the fish for a feeding frenzy. That is what you are deploying when you drop this paste into the water. A cornmeal cloud carrying honey sugar signals laced with a compound that literally rewires a fish's appetite in real time. And the fishing industry knows this, but we'll get to that betrayal in a minute. First, let me show you exactly how to make it. 3. The 3-minute tailgate preparation. You can make this paste in 3 minutes, on the tailgate of your truck. No tools, no equipment, no excuses. Here's the exact formula. Grab a small container, a plastic tub, a Tupperware lid, whatever you've got. Put in 3 heaping tablespoons of fine yellow cornmeal. And I cannot stress this enough, it must be fine. Do not use coarse grits. Do not use polenta. If the particles are too big, the entire mechanism fails, and I'll explain why later. Now take 1 heaping tablespoon of pure honey. Pour it slowly over the dry cornmeal. And here's a detail that separates this from every amateur attempt. Don't stir it immediately. Let the honey sit on top of the cornmeal for about 20 seconds. Let it begin hydrating the dry powder from below. This small pause changes the final texture completely. Then, sprinkle exactly half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon over the top. Work the whole thing together with your fingers. Press, fold, knead it in a circular motion. You're binding the dry cornmeal into the honey and trapping the cinnamon evenly throughout. You want a paste that holds together, doesn't crumble, doesn't stick to your fingers like glue, and can be rolled into a clean ball. Now, here's the secret within the secret. Once you roll that ball, set it in the direct sun for about 10 minutes. Old Ben called this letting the paste wake up. I used to think that was just old-timer poetry, but the science backs him up completely. The gentle heat from the sun accelerates the release of volatile aromatic compounds. The essential oils in the honey and the cinnamaldehyde in the cinnamon start rising off the surface. By the time you get to the water, that ball is already radiating scent before it even touches the surface. You've got your weapon. Now, let me show you how to deploy it. 4. The deployment. How to count to 30 and win. This is the moment everything comes together. You're at the water's edge. The paste is ready, but how you use it in the next 60 seconds determines whether you catch the fish of your life or go home empty-handed. Pinch off a piece about the size of a large olive. Drop it. Don't throw it. Drop it into the water about 18 to 24 inches in front of where you plan to cast. And now, you do the hardest thing in fishing. You stand still, and you count to 30. What's happening under the surface during those 30 seconds is extraordinary. The honey dissolves first, releasing sugars and aromatics into the water. The cornmeal particles separate and suspend, each one carrying traces of cinnamon oil outward in every direction. Together, they create what scientists call a localized odor plume, a concentrated trail of chemical signals expanding from a single point. Fish downstream detect this chemical signature almost immediately, and they don't swim straight toward it. They use a behavior called chemokinesis, a zigzag pattern, cutting back and forth through the scent trail, following the concentration gradient like a bloodhound tracks a scent on land. Each zig gets closer, each zag narrows the search, until they arrive at the epicenter, the exact spot where you dropped the paste. And that's where it gets almost unfair. The combination of high-energy glucose from the honey and the pungent cinnamaldehyde from the cinnamon creates what biologists call a super stimulus. It's a signal so strong that it overrides the fish's natural caution. The fish doesn't care about your line, it doesn't care about your hook. Every instinct it has is screaming, "Eat." After 30 seconds, you pitch your baited hook directly into the center of that cloud. The paste called them in. Your hook closes the deal. But here's the question nobody in the industry wants you to ask. If this works so well,
Why doesn't everyone know about it?
5. The band controversy. Why the industry hates this. So why does the title of this video say banned? Let's talk about it. Because this is where the story gets uncomfortable for a lot of people. Is this paste an illegal, toxic substance? Absolutely not. It's 100% organic, 100% biodegradable. There are no chemicals, no toxins, no environmental hazards. You could eat it yourself and be perfectly fine. But the application of this paste falls under something called chumming or prepared baiting. And in many of the best fisheries in America, that is explicitly prohibited. Take Tennessee, for example. On sections of the South Fork Holston River or Buffalo Creek, regulations strictly state artificial lures only. Those rules exist to protect fragile ecosystems and maintain fair conditions. If you use this paste in those waters, you are breaking the law. Period. But here's where it gets really interesting. In professional bass tournaments, the ones you see on TV with the big boats and the big checks, using a prepared attractant paste to draw fish into your casting zone violates the fundamental ethics of fair chase competition.
Do that in a tournament, and you're not just breaking a rule. You're disqualified. Career over. And let me be very clear about why they ban it. It's not because it's dangerous. It's not because it's toxic. They ban it because it is too effective. It completely destroys the competitive balance. The guy who spent $10,000 on his rig, throwing $40 swim baits with perfect technique, he cannot compete against $2 worth of cornmeal, honey, and cinnamon. And the industry absolutely cannot allow that comparison to exist in public. Which brings me to the part of this story that made my blood boil.
6. The corporate hypocrisy. They already know, and they sell it back to you.
This is the ultimate irony. The fishing industry doesn't just know this works. They've been quietly profiting from this exact science for decades, and they're hoping you never connect the dots. Have you ever fished a Gary Yamamoto Senko? It's arguably the most famous soft plastic bait in the history of bass fishing. Millions sold, an absolute legend. Now, do you know what one of their all-time best-selling, most consistent fish-catching color and scent profiles is? Cinnamon with large black flake. Let that sink in. Yamamoto built an empire, in part, on the realization that the cinnamon scent profile triggers massive strikes from pressured bass. The same compound, the same biological mechanism, packaged in plastic and sold back to you at a premium. And it doesn't stop there. Over in Europe, where carp fishing is a massive, highly advanced industry, companies like Haldorado sell specialized wafters and method baits that are heavily dosed with cinnamon and sweet aromatics. These products are specifically designed for pressured venues where fish have learned to ignore every traditional scent on the market. And what do they reach for? The barn pantry mix. Repackaged, rebranded, repriced. The corporations took the science that old Ben's generation knew for free, injected it into synthetic carriers, slapped a label on it, and sold it back to you for 50 times the cost. They can't patent cornmeal. They can't patent honey. They can't patent cinnamon. So they bury the original and hope you never find it. Well, you just found it. But before you head to the water, there are some adjustments that will make this paste perform even better depending on where and what you're fishing. And if you skip this next section, you're leaving fish on the table.
7. Pro-level tweaks for different waters and species. The standard recipe works, but if you want to fish like a professional, you need to match your paste to your conditions. Fishing a river with moving current? The standard paste will wash away too fast. You'll get a flash of scent and then nothing. Here's the fix. Add 1 extra tablespoon of fine cornmeal to the mix and knead the dough longer and harder. The extra cornmeal and the extended kneading release more gluten, which stiffens the paste. It'll anchor to the bottom and release a concentrated scent trail downstream instead of dissolving into nothing. Targeting panfish in a shallow pond? You don't need a big bomb. In fact, a big drop will spook them. Reduce your paste balls to the size of a green pea. And here's a tweak that old Ben himself used. Swap out half of the honey for dark molasses. Molasses has a deeper, earthier scent profile that smaller panfish respond to aggressively in warm, still water. Going after channel catfish at night? Add a pinch of turmeric powder alongside the cinnamon. Turmeric releases a distinct set of aromatic compounds that perform exceptionally well in cold, murky, low-visibility water. It's like adding a second frequency to your signal. It cuts through conditions that would muffle cinnamon alone and lights up the chemoreceptors of bottom feeders like nothing else. Match the paste to the conditions. That's the difference between catching fish and catching every fish. Now, before you rush out and try this, I need to warn you about 3 mistakes that will absolutely ruin it, and almost everyone makes at least one of them. 8. The 3 fatal mistakes you must avoid. Mistake number 1. Dropping the paste too far from your bait. The effective radius of this paste is tight. It's not a depth charge that attracts fish from across the lake. If you drop the ball 15 feet to the left and cast to the shoreline on the right, you are literally pulling the fish away from your hook. Always, always drop the paste exactly where your bait is going to land. 18 to 24 inches in front of your target, no more. Mistake number 2, using coarse cornmeal or grits. This is the most common mistake, and it's fatal. Coarse particles are too heavy. They sink straight to the bottom like little rocks. You get no suspended cloud, no particle drift, no scent vehicle. The entire delivery mechanism, the reason this works, is destroyed. It must be fine cornmeal. Check the label. And mistake number 3, the one that kills more catches than anything else: impatience. You drop the ball. 5 seconds later, you're already casting. Or worse, you throw a heavy lead sinker right on top of the dissolving paste. You just destroyed the dissolution process and sent a shockwave through the water that spooked every scout fish in the area. This is not a race. You must stand perfectly still. Count a slow, deliberate 30 seconds. Let the cloud form. Let the fish arrive. Let them commit. Only then do you pitch your bait. Patience isn't optional here. It's the entire point. Avoid those 3 mistakes, and this paste will do exactly what I promised you at the beginning of this video. Think about where you were 10 minutes ago. Maybe you were planning a trip to the tackle shop this weekend. Maybe you were about to drop $100 on the latest synthetic scent sprays and crankbaits that some brand ambassador told you were game changers. Now think about where you are right now. $2 in groceries, 3 minutes of prep on your tailgate, 30 seconds of patience on the bank, and a profound understanding of the actual biology, the metabolic triggers, the scent dispersion, the feeding response that makes fish do exactly what you want them to do. $2, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. That's all it takes. This knowledge didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because there is zero profit in spreading it. No corporation makes money when you walk past the tackle aisle and head straight for the baking section. But the old-timers knew. Old Ben knew. And now, you know. If this video opened your mind today, hit that like button. That single click tells YouTube's algorithm that this kind of raw, unfiltered, practical knowledge deserves to be seen by more regular fishermen who are tired of being sold the same overpriced lie. If you're not subscribed to Forbidden Lures yet, do it now. Hit the bell, because what we're going to uncover next is even bigger than this. Now, I want to hear from you. If I told you a $2 grocery store bait outfishes a $30 lure, would you try it this weekend? Has a grandfather, an uncle, an old-timer at the dock ever passed you a secret recipe like this? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. Get out to the water. Mix the cornmeal, honey, and cinnamon. Drop it in. Count to 30. And then come back here and tell me exactly what happened. I'm your host at Forbidden Lures. Stay sharp, fish smart, and I'll see you in the next one.